Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 4 of a new series where I interview different people in different industries. Today I will be interviewing Jimena. She is currently an HR business partner. So let me introduce you to her. Hi, Jimena.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining today's interview and Q&A session.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this session.
Yay. Okay, so before we get into the questions, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, hi, everyone. My name is Jimena. I graduated with a double major in HR and economics, and I currently do work as an HR business partner at Amazon. I have been with Amazon for a little over 3 years, and I started off as a senior human resources assistant and kind of built my way up to an HR business partner, and just looking forward to my additional accomplishments at Amazon.
So the first question is going back to college. How did you know you wanted to do a double major in econ and HR?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question, especially being that college is such a time where you're not really sure of what you want to do. Just to give you a little bit of background, I had applied to the business school and unfortunately didn't make it in. I considered this to be such a failure at that point in time and, really just upset with the way that things turned out. But ultimately, I think you make the best out of it. So I ended up taking an intro to human resources course, and it really intrigued me just from the people aspect of it and also the different areas that fall under HR. And I also figured that I would do economics as well because of the business aspect of it. So I wanted to make sure that I was focusing on majors that, one, intrigued me, and two, that would open up opportunities in the future. So even though this wasn't my first plan of action, it ended up resulting, and I'm really glad that I was able to complete both majors and learn a lot from those courses as well.
Right. So I know this may have been like a quote unquote failure, but at the end of the day, when you're looking back, do you feel like it was pretty much a blessing that it happened that way?
Yeah, I think the way that certain things turn out in life are pretty interesting at the time. You can ask, my family, my friends. I was really upset with myself and felt like I didn't accomplish what I was looking to do. So, of course, it was a different time. I was younger. I had a certain plan in my head, but ultimately, looking back, I'm very grateful for just having taken the opportunity to explore different options and putting my best foot forward. I think made a big impact, having a positive outlook on the situation and thinking there is a solution to everything, and also doing something that you're passionate about as well. Because where you end up doing something that you don't find a passion in makes it very difficult. So I think ultimately what I'm doing now is something that I truly enjoy. So I'm very happy that things turned out the way that they did.
Yeah, that's amazing that something that could be seen as devastating at that time is now a great opportunity for you to do something that you actually love to do.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, for those of you that may be watching this, and whether you're applying to, different universities or you're currently trying to still figure out what that is going to look like for your future, just know that you want to do something that you're passionate about. And, even though you may have failures, look at it with a positive mindset and know that, there is a solution to everything. So.
I know you started off your career as a recruiter at a different company. So, what was that experience like?
Yeah, my experience as a recruiting coordinator, I mean, the majority of what my job consisted of was phone screening, setting up interviews for candidates with hiring managers for different roles within the company. So, whether it was for a warehouse associate, a customer service representative, sales associate at the showroom as well. So, different areas within the company, and it was a family owned business as well. In terms of what I enjoyed was the fact that, I would phone screen certain candidates. If I thought that they were qualified for the role, I would obviously move them forward to the next process to interview with the hiring manager. So, in terms of what I thought my successes were when I phone screened someone that I thought was qualified, they obtained the role, and just being able to hear about their experience and seeing that they were successful in the role, I found success in as well. Just knowing that I was able to identify that talent and set them up for success in their role, I think was something that I truly enjoyed. In terms of, I guess, things that I didn't enjoy so much, which kind of tell you a little bit about why I'm not in recruiting anymore,
Mm-hmm.
is that I did at times find the job to be a little, repetitive, just
Mm.
because it was a lot of interviewing throughout the day, looking at resumes. So that part I didn't enjoy so much about, being in the office and just doing phone screens all day. But I would also kind of do fairs and travel to different showrooms as well. So, there were things that I enjoyed as well.
When you are recruiting for the company you represent, what are some things that you looked for?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I will base this off of my current company, which is Amazon. So, even though I'm not in the recruiting field, as an HR business partner, I do still participate heavily in interview pods. And the great thing is that I get the chance to participate in different pods for different roles, whether it's within HR as well as operations. So, obviously, depending on what role you're interviewing for, the qualifications may look different and may vary. But I think similarities that, I would look for, at least when I'm recruiting or interviewing someone for a position. I think one is just the tone and what that outlook looks like. So I know that sometimes, we do look for those qualifications, but one of the things that I really like to focus on is their people skills, just
Mhm.
from being able to hear them and interact with them during the interview, hone in on what their outlook looks like, what are their skills when they interact with other people, how they can portray that in their interview. I think being positive is definitely, something important regardless of what role you're in. So, does that candidate sound excited? Do they sound like, they really want this role?
Mm.
Are they passionate about what they do? I think another thing too is adaptability. So, in some of the questions that I ask, I do try to see what their adaptability looks like. I think,
Mhm.
for Amazon, we have an ever changing environment. So, not every day is the same. I think adaptability and having that positive outlook are two main things that I look for in a candidate.
Yeah, those are great qualities that are good to keep in mind when like preparing for an interview or trying to look for a new job to make sure that you have those characteristics when you are interviewing with someone in HR.
Definitely.
The next question is, what made you want to transition roles from more of the recruiting role to HR role?
Yeah, I think this is a great question just because it kind of makes me reflect on, where I was when I first graduated college to now.
Right.
So, just to give a little bit of background, I was on the verge of graduating college and I was starting to look for opportunities in different companies. And so there was one day where I was at the showroom and I was still a customer service representative. And one of the owners of the company had actually stopped by to visit the showroom. So, of course, everyone was like, on edge, just making sure that everything was good with the showroom. He actually happened to stop by the customer service area. So I introduced myself and he asked me about my background, and I decided to, tell him that I was about to graduate college and I was looking for outside HR opportunities at the moment.
Mhm.
And he actually asked me if I was interested in an HR opportunity at the company that I was working for, so Raymore and Flanagan. And he ended up giving me the contact information of the VP of HR at the time.
Mhm.
So it was definitely a conversation that, ended up going in the direction that I didn't think it would. And that kind of opened up what the rest of my journey was going to be. So ultimately, although I was looking for an HR position, they did not have anything available, at least locally at the time.
Right.
But they ended up opening up a brand new recruiting coordinator position for me because at the time we only had the main recruiter. And so even though they didn't have the HR opportunity, they, asked me if I was interested in a recruiting coordinator role. So thinking back at the time, I was not truly interested in, being a recruiting coordinator. But I think another thing to keep in mind is, look at your opportunities and see how they can get you there. Because I think as a younger version of myself, I was hungry for getting to where I wanted to be. And sometimes we have to understand that, we have to start somewhere. So I took the opportunity as a recruiting coordinator. And, even though the majority of my role was based on phone screens and interviews, I also had the opportunity while I was a recruiting coordinator to shadow one of our HR field specialists. So I was also able to see what, the day to day looked like for an HR field specialist and
Mhm.
ultimately what ended up happening is the HR field specialist that I was shadowing was promoted to a regional, and they ended up offering me the HR field specialist role. So it worked out. I ended up,
Right.
getting to the point that I wanted to be in. I'm glad that ultimately I didn't think to turn down the recruiting coordinator position because
Right.
it ended up opening that path for me.
Wow. So you had to kind of ask and you had to look outside of what you're currently doing. And even though recruiting wasn't 100% what you wanted to do, you still took that offer. And then later down the road, you were able to get to where you really wanted to be, which was an HR role.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the two big learning lessons from this experience is one, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I mean, I
Mhm.
always considered myself to be someone that was more of an introvert, more, shy and not really out there. So I
Mhm.
think, challenging yourself and being comfortable with the uncomfortable is something that, will really help you with your personal growth and development and also professionally speaking. Because by me putting myself out there and, speaking with the owner of the company, I thought wasn't something I would be able to do, but it ultimately ended up working out. And so, again, one, putting yourself out there. And then the second learning lesson is, again, sometimes you do have to start somewhere and look at the positive things that, something can bring you, even if it's not what you're looking for at the time. At
Mhm.
least for myself, it opened up the path to where I ultimately wanted to be.
Yeah, that's great. And then I know right now you're no longer in recruiting. So what do you do on a day-to-day basis as an HR business partner?
Yeah. Something that I truly love about working at Amazon is every day is different. And that's what I enjoy. I enjoy a job that is not the same every day. I enjoy a job that challenges me to be the best version of myself every day. So there's what we call standard work that, is something that we're supposed to be doing every day, reviewing reports or running reports, looking at our attendance, attrition, promotions, checking emails, that's the standard thing. But some of the things that I truly enjoy is as an HR business partner, I oversee a team. So for me, I think the biggest piece where I learned to, continue to grow is overseeing a team and being not a manager, but a leader. I think there's a big difference between both because for me, a leader is, someone who focuses on not just training their team, but also their development. What does their
Mhm.
future look like? What is your team's strengths, weaknesses? How can you help them develop and get them to the next step? Because ultimately, for my team, their success is my success. And that's something that I truly value, just knowing that I can make an impact on my team, and striving to do that every single day is something that I truly, truly enjoy about the job. And then aside from overseeing my team, there's additional projects that I'm also a part of that, again, truly something that I value as being a member of, Amazon. So for example, some of the projects that I'm part of is operations, talent, and development. So we focus on all levels of operations leaders in terms of mentorship programs, making sure that we're partnering leaders up with their right mentors, having roundtables, setting them up for interview pods. What does the preparation look like? So that's something that I really enjoy. I'm also part of the HR staffing and development team. So similar to operations, we look at our HR staff, not just within my site, but within the region, within the network, and say, okay, what does our talent funnel look like? Again, how can we set them up with the right mentor? What do the next steps look like? Who, is at the top of that talent that we're looking to promote, and how can we help them get there as well? So those are some of, the groups that I'm part of. But another big thing about Amazon too is that we're very big on inclusion and diversity. So
Mhm.
something that we're really proud of is having established our affinity groups. So with our affinity groups, we have many different, kinds at our building specifically. So we have women at Amazon, we have Asians at Amazon, we have Latinos at Amazon, the Black Employee Network. So we have many different affinity groups where we encourage the participation of our operations leaders, our associates, to really get them involved, not just, within their job, but what can they do to impact communities, to impact
Mhm.
their own personal growth and development. So there's so much more where you can truly make an impact,
Right.
not just within your site, but outside of your site as well.
Sounds like it's not just, hire them and then they're on their own, but you really do want them to be involved at the company and see it as more of like a community and be able to feel included rather than just kind of be thrown to a position where you really don't have a lot of guidance.
Yeah, definitely. And, even aside from our operations leaders and HR leaders, we also
Right.
focus on the growth and development of our tier one associates too. How can we help them, promote because we're big on promotions within the company. So how can
Mhm.
we, figure out game plans for that as well?
That's awesome. So this question's from Ash Shredder. What do you enjoy about HR?
Great question. What I enjoy the most about HR, if I can say more than one thing. So, one is that for my own professional development, I've learned so much. Working in HR, you interact with many different personalities, but I think ultimately that helps you become, a better person, a better leader, and it helps you know how to navigate through different environments. So I think just learning from each experience and growing professionally and personally. But aside from my own personal growth, knowing how I can make that impact on other people. It's
Mhm.
crazy to say that, even the smallest things, smallest gestures can go a long way for different people that you interact with. And again, what I'm really passionate about is the fact that outside of just my normal HR day to day, that there's so many different things that I can be involved in that will make that impact on our associates, on the managers, on our HR team. Getting them involved in different affinity groups, different activities. I'm able to have those one-on-ones with them, talk about what their action plan looks like for, that promotion that they're looking for, helping them build on some of the areas of opportunity that they have. So I think for me, what I enjoy the most about working in HR is having a team that I can impact, and as well as working on different initiatives for our associates and our operations leaders to help them build on their personal and professional growth as well.
Yeah, it sounds like when you're describing your job, it seems like you really do love what you do, which is really great. And I want to say it's also sometimes rare to see. What are some of the skill sets you need to be an HR partner?
Yeah. So with the skill sets, I think number one, first and foremost, you need to be a people person. Unless you're a people person, it's going to be really tough for you to be successful in the role. I mean, you are interacting with literally, like I mentioned, all different types of personalities, different levels within the company. So being a people person and truly having those effective communication skills are necessary for the job. Knowing how to navigate through difficult conversations and having conversations with your team. I would say right after people skills, adaptability, as I mentioned before. So I know
Mhm.
what I mentioned before is what we look for in candidates is to be adaptable. I think, as an HR business partner, you come into different situations every day, and not all of them are planned, right? So whether
Right.
it's an investigation, whether it's a performance conversation that you're having with a manager who is not performing, or if you're leading a group and talking about different initiatives for community service, I mean,
Mhm.
I can go on all day. At Amazon, our environment changes drastically in
Right.
terms of different technologies that are coming out, or just the environment in itself. So I think being adaptable and being able to work through different situations and navigate through them is really important. So I would say those are the two most important factors that will help you become a successful HR partner. And I would say the third thing is just your willingness to learn, which also goes kind of hand in hand with adaptability. If you're not willing to learn, there's only so much anybody else can do for you. And I speak on that from a leadership point of view. So, for example, when I look at my team, I will do as much as I can to set them up for success, give them projects that are going to give them more visibility. But if they're not willing to learn or take that opportunity,
Right.
then it's really up to them too. So I think having that willingness and eagerness to learn is also very much needed in the role.
Right. And you mentioned the topic of technology. So I had a question regarding that as well. Where does technology come into play regarding making the HR role easier?
Yeah, I've learned to navigate through different platforms within our technology and using that and leveraging that to become successful in my role. At Amazon, we're all about innovation. So
Mhm.
whether it's out on the floor with, different mechanic items, for associates to be able to perform their job better, or whether it's for our HR team with using different reports, different functions to help us pull data and information that is needed to look at different trends and analysis and things like that. So technology comes into play in the HR role every single day, and it 100% makes our lives easier throughout time. I mean, aside from the projects that we work on, we get requests all the time. So sometimes we're looking at, large data sets, or just knowing how to use different functions and use the systems that we're provided with definitely helps save a lot of time, especially when we're trying to pull a lot of information. So whether it's through Excel using the functions, but also the different systems that Amazon creates is really important. So that's really what I enjoy also, is just learning every day. I learn something new every single day.
It's really important when you go to look for a job, for instance, that you do see companies that are investing money into technology.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Amazon does a really great job with this, because even though we do have systems coming out practically every single day, there's
Right.
always, a video tutorial or a standard operations procedure that goes through the step by step. So I think Amazon does a really great job with that.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. And
Mhm.
I also wanted to talk a little bit more of the interview process in general. So, for people that are looking to get a job, whether it be at Amazon or just at a different company, because I know you had experience outside of Amazon, could you tell us about your most impressive or memorable interview?
Just thinking about perhaps one that was not too long ago, it's actually for one of our current HR team members. So I remember was set up for a phone screen with this individual. We want to make sure that we're choosing, the best candidate that will be successful in the role. And without going into too much detail, I think what was the most impressive and memorable part of the interview was just her overall positive outlook. By the tone and her answers, you can tell that she was very passionate about what she did. And mind you, she was a tier one associate. So when I say tier one, it's basically like an entry level position at
Right.
Amazon, a warehouse associate. Again, as I mentioned before, Amazon is very big on promoting within. So we were actually interviewing tier one associates for an HR position on our team.
Right.
And I just think that even though she didn't have really, much HR experience, what really stood out to me was her willingness to learn, her positivity, and just her excitement that I was able to hear on the phone call.
Right.
And I think that's another great reminder too, is sometimes, as we're applying for jobs and different roles, we look at those qualifications and sometimes we say, oh, well, I may not have this, or,
Right.
I'm not trained in this, but I think ultimately you have to take those chances, because you never know. You never know if maybe that recruiter will see, and based off of the interview might completely change their mind, even if they see that you don't have much experience. So I think that's another great thing. And that's something that we also focus on as well, is even if they don't have much experience in the field, are they someone who will be successful because they're open to learning? They are passionate about what they do, setting them up for success too. So I think that was the most memorable thing, is just her overall positivity throughout the interview, believe it or not.
Yeah, that gives a lot of hope for a lot of the people that go into one industry and are looking to switch, because I feel like a lot of people think graduating in college that whatever you majored in, that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It's good to hear that the HR representatives are not just looking at their technical skills, but actually what they can bring to the table other than what they have on their resume.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to add on to that,
Mhm.
I've seen situations where there could be an individual that, let's just say, for example, they're extremely talented in the technological aspects of it, and they have their own ways of figuring that out. But
Right.
if the behavior isn't there, if the positivity isn't there, then they might not be the best fit for the role. So that has a lot to do with it.
Awesome. And the next question is, what are some of the types of resumes that are automatically screened out when you review them?
with the types of resumes that I personally would probably not further review is obviously if they have, grammatical errors, if it's not formatted properly. If it's more than one page, I would also say as well, because at that point, you're writing much more than you need to. And you're not
Right.
looking for focal points that will kind of grab the attention of that person reviewing the resume. So I'm a big fan of, a resume that's formatted clearly, that's easy to read, that within a minute I can see, okay, what has this person done? A one pager as well. So I think those are some of the big factors that I look for when I'm looking to further review them, for a possible interview.
Yeah, that's really good to know, especially for those that are looking for internships, because I've been getting messages of people saying, they can't find an internship, and it would be good to spend some time on your resume and really make some edits if you need to, so that when you are applying, that it is the best quality resume that you can possibly give.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that with resumes, you don't want to include lines that include every single thing that you do in your position. The purpose of your resume is to really focus on your major accomplishments, your bigger impacts that you've had within the roles that you've obtained, and how that aligns with the position that you're interviewing for. So it's not about how long your resume is, it's about how much you can share within that one pager that is concise and really just highlights your major accomplishments and those impacts that you've made.
I've gotten to the point where some of my experience is making it to the second page. So what I did was I just put that into my LinkedIn and then deleted it from my resume so that it would be just one page.
Yeah, that's another great best practice as well.
Another question related to interviews is, what is an example of a good question to ask during an interview?
For example, tell me about a time where you sacrificed long term gain for a short term result. The reason why I like this question is because it really helps me see how that individual is able to act under pressure, able to make decisions, and look at what am I sacrificing and to the benefit of what or of who. And I also like to see if they're willing to take actions that will also not negatively impact others, even though it may take a longer time to get to that result. Again, there's so many different questions that I think are good questions to kind of be able to see that personality and the decision making. And I think that's, one of the questions that I like to focus on during my interviews.
And then what about the other way around where the candidate is asking a question? What do you think is a good question to ask if they had to just ask one or two?
Yeah, I think this is such an important part of the interview process. I've had interviews where the candidate asked zero questions. When a candidate asks a question, that truly shows their interest in the interviewer's aspect and, thoughts on the role. So I would say one of the questions that, I appreciate is asking about what my experience has been,
Mhm.
and also from the other side too. I mean, if I would be interviewing for something, I would be curious to see what their career progression looked like. How did they get where they are now? What do they enjoy the most about their role? It's a great way for me to understand what their perspective is, being that they have been with the company. So
Right.
one, I would say asking a question that asks about, their experience, them asking what are qualities that you look for in the perfect candidate for the role, because again that shows me that you're interested in knowing what those qualities are and working towards that as well. So I would say those are the two main questions that I would look for. The candidate asking questions is great because again it shows that interest. So that's something that I definitely look for when I'm interviewing someone.
Right. And would you say that you can tell if someone researched the company beforehand?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you can tell just by some of the questions that they're asking,
Right.
or even when they're giving me their elevator pitch, maybe if they're looking to kind of cater what they're doing to what we're looking for in the candidate, just from the interview itself and the questions that they ask, it definitely shows whether or not they did their research of the company. I think that's also a great thing to look at too, because at least from my perspective, when I was interviewing for different positions, I made sure to learn as much as I could so that maybe if they ask me a question or even if I can ask that question that, I was focusing on those things.
Right. So it's really important for people, if you're watching and you are trying to go into an interview, to actually prepare the questions ahead of time, or, as you're talking to the person that's interviewing you, and as well as doing some research, because HRs can tell that.
100%.
So, how would you say you juggle your work and everything else that is going on in your life? I know you are getting married this year, you also bought a house. So, in other words, how do you maintain a good work-life balance?
That's a great question. So one thing I can say is it's not perfect. It's a work in progress. It's really up to you to to be disciplined and know when that cutoff is. If you were to have asked me when I first started with Amazon or when I first got promoted to an HR business partner, I think that was definitely a struggle at first because when I was recently promoted from a senior human resources assistant, which is an hourly role, to an HR business partner, which is a salaried role, at the time that I got promoted, I was terrible with work life balance. And I think the
Mhm.
biggest part was the fact that I was trying to prove myself as a new leader within the company that, I was putting in all these hours. I was trying to do everything that I possibly could. I
Right.
said yes to everything that I was asked to do. And, those experiences helped me kind of learn those lessons up until where I am today.
Mhm.
So I think one of the most valuable lessons to learn is you don't always have to say yes to everything. And
Right.
again, that doesn't mean you say no to everything, but you have to learn what your limits are and what's not going to burn you out because it is very easy to be burnt out. And I say this from experience. Learning from that, now I know what my limits are. So I think, even though my work life balance is not perfect, it's much better than where it was because I know when I need to put my phone away if, I'm having dinner with my fiance or working on the house. Yes, your job is important, your professional and personal growth is important, and your team is important, but you also need to know and need to let others know that your personal life is also important too. So it definitely is a juggle and it's not easy, but it's doable.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I know when you first go into a role, it's harder to define what work and life balance is, but as you slowly get acclimated to the role that you're in now, you're able to have a clear distinction of what's work and what's life.
Yep, definitely.
And I did want to ask you what your passions are. So, what are some of the passions that you have outside of your work?
So, passions outside of my job, I guess. Well, one of the things is, as we talked about before, I recently bought a house. So, with buying a house, there's definitely changes and renovations that you want to make. Our home is still a work in progress, but I find joy in that. Just making a house your home, working on different projects. Driving over to Home Depot, coming back. Doing different things. I truly enjoy doing that with my fiance currently, and it's great quality time that we spend together. Aside from working on the house, I would say whenever I do have the time, I do like to look at different recipes and try them out. I don't really cook during the week just because of the
Right.
hours that I work. So on the weekends, I try to, do some of that as well and kind of try different things. Bike riding is also something that my fiance and I like doing. Right now with the cold weather, it's a little bit difficult, but we try to do as much as we can. Playing the piano and the guitar, but we'll see how that works out. Hopefully I have more time to focus on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you have like hobbies outside of just like work, and that you're able to spend quality time with your fiance as well as your family. I know you're big on family too. So it's great to hear that you have, those interests that you can do.
Think, with this question, the biggest factor to focus
Mhm.
on is your time,
Right,
because at work you give so much of yourself to, your job and to others and the development of others, but you
right.
have to constantly remind yourself about self-care. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. So
Mhm.
focus on yourself, focus on what you like doing because, life is short. So
Yeah, that's great advice. And then the very last question is, could you give any advice to those who want to start their career in recruiting and or HR?
go into opportunities with an open mindset. Even if it's not, the position that you're looking for, think about how that position could get you to where you want to be in the
Mhm.
future. Not everything comes easy. Great things come with hard work. So just remind yourself that it may not be a short path to get to where you want to be, but it's the journey that takes you there that will build you as a person, both on your personal and professional sides. Along with that, I would also say failure is okay. That was something that was so hard for me to understand.
Mm,
I thought that if you fail, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But if there's one thing that I've learned is, when you fail at something, take that as a learning lesson, helps you as a person, and look back at that failure and say, okay, what could I have done better? This is what I'm going to do moving forward. So, again, taking opportunities and just being good to people. I mean, this world needs positivity. And know that when you work in recruiting and HR, or really any role, it doesn't necessarily have to be HR, just think about the impact that you can make on other people. I
right.
mean, that is huge. Sometimes I sit back and I'm like, I'm so caught up in the day to day sometimes, but then I'm like, wow, this is what I did to get, people more involved, to build on their personal and professional growth. So think about that impact that you can make on others. I mean, they could be talking about you at the dinner table with their families. So, think about that impact that you can make, because you definitely can.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much for that advice because it's really helpful, especially when it comes to making sure you have an impact on someone because it's so easy to get bogged down with just the day to day, but really, what's the whole purpose of where you are?
Yeah, definitely. There's certain expectations of the role that you have, but think about how you can make that role better. How can you go outside of those boundaries and make that impact for other people? Challenging yourself and being comfortable with the uncomfortable is how I like to say it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Jimena, for joining episode 4. I learned so much about HR, what to look for when I go interview, resume, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your career experience here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I think, this was truly exciting. It's the first time that I do an interview like this. So I was very much looking forward to it. And I hope that, for everyone that is watching this, hopefully this inspires you a little bit and kind of gives you some best practices as you're looking for a job, or even if you do have a job, how you can further build on that development as well. So again, thank you, Jen, for having me. This was
Thank
awesome.
you. So, if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe. We'll have other episodes up later this week. So, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.